So as a Virginia Beach area local that's lived here my entire life, what I want to do in this video is talk to you about the things that, based on what I know, what would I want to tell myself if I were moving to the area for the first time. And we'll talk about a lot of different types of things, but I feel like as just an honest approach of what is actually here, I want to make sure that if you do plan to move here to the Virginia Beach area for the first time, I want you to feel like you are as comfortable as possible, as fast as possible. And I do think there are certain things that, because of what I know, I think that if you do know these things beforehand, it's going to help save you a lot of heartache. And honestly, you might not want to move to the Virginia Beach area if you know some of these things and aren't comfortable with some of these things. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is what you may have heard about some talk before, which is you may be very familiar with the ACU's jet noise zone map, which is a map that shows you where the jet noise is most prevalent in Virginia Beach. And I say this because I know from personal experience that the jet noise is extremely loud, or can be extremely loud. Frustrating. People often hate it. Some people love it. But what I also know is that a lot of the city does not have any jet noise at all, or any of the areas around Virginia Beach might not have much or any at all either. And so I think that on one hand, the jet noise can get overblown because people think that the noise spans the entire area. That is not true at all. But when you do pick houses from different parts of the country or the world, it's hard to tell for sure where the biggest noise areas are and really what loud really looks like. Using this ACU's jet noise zone map is very important, and it's a disclosure in the Virginia Beach area real estate program. If you buy a house in the Virginia Beach area, you have a disclosure that it shows you which jet noise zone you're in. There's different decibel levels, and you can see it all based on this map. And there's a color-coded map, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So here it is right here. Look at all these green colors. This is the Virginia Beach city right here. Now, if you notice, first thing is all the white are areas that don't have any jet noise, elevated jet noise at all. And so every line that's darker green and going into closer to blues, that's where you start seeing the elevated noise levels. And so for me, I grew up in an area that was all, further away from the jet noise. And so when I would go to places that I knew, friends or whatever in the greens, the darker greens, or, closer to the Oceana Naval Air Station, it was noticeable how drastic the difference of an environment it felt like. But the difference between the uncolored area on this side and the middle darker greens, as you go a shade by shade darker, you do notice a difference. One thing to note is that the line between where you would hear something and not hear something could be a very short distance. So I would not necessarily assume that because you hear it, for example, looking on the map here, and I do hear like in Lansdowne Meadows, Lansdowne Lake, I do hear it there. But as soon as you go across to like Rock Creek, Salem Lakes, I don't hear it. And this map to me is pretty accurate. And so, this next darker, like the first level of green, there are parts in there that bother me more than others. But when you get into the second level of green and further, you really start noticing it a lot. And for me, if I was to move to Virginia Beach and I didn't use this map, I might be rolling the dice on moving here and really enjoying it if I don't like the noise. And one of the main reasons I even say this too is because in Great Neck, which is one of the most popular parts of Virginia Beach right here, half of the area of Great Neck is covered in jet noise regions. You can see here, like the south part of Great Neck, it has the dark or medium shades of green. Even going towards the ocean front, you'll hear it too. So a lot of the areas that have the highest demand sometimes have the highest or high jet noise. Even going down to the southeastern part in Red Mill Farms, closer to Strawbridge, you'll hear it over there also, down in the south part of Virginia Beach. But ironically, you'll notice that too, there are pockets where you won't hear it. Like the way the jets fly, it can be in areas that it might avoid different parts of the area. So that's why I'd say that don't make any assumptions as to if it's if you're going to move to the eastern side of Virginia Beach, for example, don't assume that every part has jet noise, but definitely use this map as a guide. And that leads me to my number 2 thing. This actually ties into the last tip of the video. So watch till the end and I'll tell you about that one. Be very familiar with the grocery stores that are in the Virginia Beach area and the types of grocery stores that you like the most. Because of when the city and the area around Virginia Beach was built, there are older grocery stores that have still kind of carried on through the decades and still are here today that might feel older, but don't necessarily indicate an area that you might not want to be in. It's just that it's just an older part of town, and so those grocery stores still exist. One example is Food Lion. There are a lot of Food Lions in Virginia Beach, in the Virginia Beach area around Norfolk, Chesapeake. And that's probably because it's one of the longest standing grocery store chains in the Virginia Beach area. And so because of that, it's around a lot of places that have older neighborhoods. But some of those older neighborhoods may not be in as desirable parts of town, but some are in the most desirable parts of town. So I'd say kind of take that part with a grain of salt, but there are some individual grocery stores that if you want to be close to, you got to take note. And some of these are really great to be near. For example, Wegmans is over in the central part of Virginia Beach, over near Town Center. So right here, here's Wegmans right here. It says it weird over there, but it's just south of the boulevard right here. So that one's awesome, and it's the only one in the area. So being close to there in Town Center is very nice, or being somewhere in a way that you can get to it pretty easily is nice. Also, Whole Foods is over on the eastern side of Virginia Beach in an area called Hilltop, which, where are we at right here, which is, I'd say, one of the most in-demand shopping centers on the eastern side of Virginia Beach. But in addition to that, another new one recently is Publix. Publix just showed up in the Red Mill Commons area, right around near Nemo Parkway, General Booth Boulevard, and Ocean Lakes. And I was just there, and it's a nice grocery store. And then Trader Joe's, which there's one that is right next in Hilltop, next to Whole Foods, well, across the street from Whole Foods, excuse me. But just in the last few days, Trader Joe's has applied for an alcoholic beverage license in a place near Town Center. So they have not announced this yet. And they have not said when the next one will be open, but they know it's the news is out. It's happening right next. It's in Town Center, but just next to Town Center, over in an old Bed Bath & Beyond store right next to this Regal Columbus. So this building right here, that's going to be, part of it at least, is going to be a Trader Joe's. So being close to that, again, being close to Town Center is very helpful. But there are 2 other grocery store chains that I think are important. One is Harris Teeter, which I'd say is more of the middle to upper level, like in terms of niceness. I think Harris Teeter is one of the nicer ones in the area. There are some that I think are nicer than others because it was one of the, back in the 90s, late 90s, it was like, when it came, people saw it as like the nicest in the area. But again, some of them didn't change or revamp their aesthetics. So they still have the early 2000s kind of vibe in them. They're still nice grocery stores, but they just don't feel maybe as nice compared to when they were brand new. But Harris Teeters are nice to be around. And also Kroger. And Kroger is another one that has drastic differences between ones that are like old and feel kind of drab and some that are new and they're big and feel like, I mean, there's some of my favorite grocery stores, the newer ones. For example, there's one in Kempsville that my wife doesn't like. I don't really like either, right off of Providence Road, this one. I don't like it. It's dark. It's small. It feels kind of clogged. But if you go over into Chesapeake, over close to the Battlefield Boulevard area, there's one on this side right here. This is actually our favorite Kroger. So if you find a Kroger Supercenter, a big one, being close to one of those is also very helpful too. So definitely be aware of your grocery stores, the types of them, and just being close to them to me is pretty important. Next is important if you have sinus or asthma issues, is make sure your medication, if you have it, is up to date or ready to go. And definitely be ready for a change of atmosphere from wherever you're coming from. From my perspective, a lot of my friends deal with asthma or sinus issues due to me, being in this area. People that move here from different parts of the country have made comments about how their sinuses take some time to get acclimated. And sometimes people don't really ever shake this unsettledness in their sinuses. And so I've been here my whole life, so I'm kind of used to it, I feel like. But, a lot of my friends and people I'm close to, in some cases, have dealt with this. And, I think this is something that gets often overlooked when you move to a different area. And I think that the East Coast, in my opinion, might deal with it more than other parts of the country. I do not know the science behind it, but I would only imagine that, there's just maybe more dust and just things in the air can get into your sinuses and your nasal passages and just make it more uncomfortable. But people have had issues here, and it's definitely something to keep in mind. But if you are moving here for sure and you do have sinus problems, make sure that you have medication up to date. And I even just check with and get a primary care physician pretty quickly, just in case you might need some additional help with your sinuses when you get here. And the next is, I would definitely be aware of the places in the Virginia Beach area that get the most traffic. First thing is, there are two primary interstates in the Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads area to note. But then of those two, they branch into other interstates. So you got 64 that runs like in a horseshoe and goes all the way around. 64 runs all the way around into 664. But then you've got 264 that is like the belt of Virginia Beach and goes through Norfolk, through Portsmouth, all the way down closer to the western branch part of Chesapeake and heading towards 664 there. So those two primary interstates end up running into a large, vast part of the Hampton Roads area, because 64, again, you can see it runs all the way into Richmond and beyond, but it runs kind of in a big kind of a horseshoe around through the cities. So the interchanges, especially on 264 though, in Virginia Beach can be backed up a lot and get very frustrating. So all of these interchanges on 264 all the way across. So even if you're close to an interstate, you might find yourself in traffic getting in and out of the congestion around those interchanges. In addition to that, 64 can back up a lot of it can back up, but there are different sections between the interchange of 264 and 64 up into the Norfolk Navy Base. There can be accidents and can cause backups there, but then going up into the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, it can be super frustrating because this can back up for anywhere from 10 minutes to over an hour. In addition to your normal travel time. So they're going to add lanes to this Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel pretty soon in the next, I guess, 2 or 3 years. But until then, it's still going to be very, very frustrating. And again, you have tunnels going all through 664. You've got congestion on 664, other parts of 264. You've got multiple tunnels, Midtown Tunnel. You've got the Downtown Tunnel. So a lot of the interstates can be very congested or have different parts of the day that can be very congested. But in addition to that, keep in mind the places that have a lot of stoplights, namely a lot of the suburban parts of Virginia Beach, all through Salem, all through Lynn Haven, down to Princess Anne. It might not feel like a big deal, but there are some parts of the area that just really were designed not to support so many people. And so as the housing grew in the 90s and 2000s, the roads are still in construction to accommodate the growth of the area. And so you'll find more stoplights. It can just be frustrating. If you look at Google Maps and look at the traffic for, when you might be driving to work, check the times that you're going to be driving on Google and see what it tells you it suggests, because that's probably a more accurate guess than just plugging it in on if it's like a 9:30 in an evening, or if you're watching this at noon. The times change a lot as far as how much traffic is in each spot. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, and it might affect where you might want to live, because you don't want to be stuck in traffic for an extra 15, 20 minutes or 30 minutes in some cases. The next is, a lot of times when people move to Virginia Beach, the Virginia Beach area, Virginia Beach and Chesapeake specifically, are known for their school districts. But one thing I think I would suggest looking at is, don't be so tied to one specific school district. And niche.com and greatschools.org do a pretty good job of ranking them. And I can always recommend looking at those rankings if you want to. But sometimes, because the demand of certain schools can kind of push those to the top a lot, it makes the others look like they're not that great, which, again, I can't give exact opinions about that necessarily for steering purposes, but there are some I think that are awesome that just aren't as high ranked on the rankings that you'll see online. And also too, because there are so many people that come here that are not school district dependent, you might find that even though, yes, it does matter, school district does matter, you might find some school districts that are in great demand for other reasons. So if you're concerned about resale value because of school district, you might find that it may not be as big of a deal, when it's time to sell, if you find different neighborhoods within other school districts that may not be in the quote unquote best or top on any list. Because what you'll find is that a lot of times people will just look on those rankings and just say, I want the best one. That really pigeonholes you into a specific area, and often you might pay the most too. Keep in mind though that when you look at those rankings online, people that do move here use those rankings a lot. So there is a value to paying up for the school district, that's on tops of those lists in some cases, because when it's time to sell, unless those rankings change, which they can, people often, when they're moving here, are going to be looking at those exact same ranking sites. So that can be a guide to tell you places that sell the most. But even though they might not sell the fastest or the quickest in other school districts, it's still, because of the amount of people that come in and out on a regular basis, you may not have that big of an issue if you do choose other parts of town. And the next is when you're looking in an area for the first time, especially here, we've got areas that are really old, areas that are kind of old, and areas that are newish, and then some that are like brand new, right? You have everything. It's easy to discount areas that feel old as being just rough spots or not places that you want to live. I would venture to say that this area, because of how old this area is traditionally, there are a lot of places that I think are sneaky good values in places that don't necessarily look like it. Now, that is not to say that there are places that did not fit that definition. It is definitely a case-by-case basis, but there are places that feel a bit old and kind of run down, but because of where they are, there's some really nice older neighborhoods that are full of people that have lived there for 40, 50 years that just never moved, right? And so those houses, they can be in the price ranges of $300,000, $500,000, even $800,000 to $1 million in some cases, just because there's sneaky little corner spots, especially in Norfolk. Talk about other areas like that in a second. As examples, if you're in Virginia Beach, places like Windsor Woods is in an area that is kind of an old part of town, but Windsor Woods for $400,000, you can get a real nice value for a house and very close to stuff, close to parks, close to town center. I'll show you where that is. Like even on the western side in general of Virginia Beach, that western side is mostly built anywhere from sometimes in the 80s, but really the 70s, 60s, sometimes even in the 50s and before. And so just older parts of town. Caroline Farms, an amazing neighborhood where we at. Caroline Farms right here, amazing neighborhood for the prices in the 3s and 4s. Anything through Kempsville. For what you're paying, some awesome value and great houses, just older houses. And again, the places that are there have been there for a long time, so there have not been as many facelifts. But now you're starting even to see in Fairfield, this Fairfield Shopping Center is getting a total facelift. Strip malls are these areas right here getting knocked down and just leveled and rebuilt into brand new buildings. So the turnover is happening, but in the meantime, there's some really great little nooks and crannies that you might drive straight by and not really consider it. But you can get some good value, a little bit cheaper price, whether it be cheaper $500 as opposed to $600, $700 as opposed to $800, or $300 or $400 as opposed to $500. You can get that value in there that I think is helpful. Otherwise, going over like into Norfolk, there's central parts of Norfolk. Great example is a neighborhood called Bel Air right here. This area is right off of Little Creek Road, which is just kind of, look, it's just old, right? Old strip malls, old gas station, the old apartment complexes. It's just old. These buildings up back here built in probably like the 60s, right? But if you turn past the new Aldi, by the way, come back here, Bel Air has got just trees, nice foresty feel to it, older, well-built brick houses, ranch, in some two-story. You're kind of just tucked way back into this little nook, this corner that people don't even pay any attention to. And so I think for the prices, you can be in the 3s and 4s in Bel Air, and you're in a nice little nook, So this type of example can be in other parts of Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Norfolk, all through Hampton Roads. And I think it's important to keep in mind that even though you're on a main road that looks kind of grungy or old, does not mean that you might find some good spots off of there that can get some good value. So my next tip is on that same vein, which is I would not focus just on Virginia Beach if you have a choice. And the reason is not because I don't like Virginia Beach, because I do love Virginia Beach. And I was born in areas around Virginia Beach. But because Virginia Beach's prices, which are in the mid fours median sales price right now, and in the upper fours, you're going to find yourself in the fives, sixes, and sevens, or million pretty easily in some cases, which if you find those neighborhoods in Virginia Beach, they are great neighborhoods. I love them. Most of them. But you can find some great neighborhoods for similar prices and might get more house or more yard or more character, because some people don't like the lack of character in a lot of parts of Virginia Beach. So if you want more character, for example, Norfolk's a great example of a spot that's loaded with it. Ghent, amazing. You're going to have a totally different kind of type of experience than you would in a place like Virginia Beach, which has nothing like Ghent. Nothing like Ghent. Ghent has, the old, 1920s colonial style, 30s, 40s, even 1900s, turn of the century. Some amazing architecture in through Ghent. Also streets that have some green space and like smaller mom and pop restaurants and great spots off 21st Street, good places for a beer or a restaurant, or off of Colley Avenue and Colonial Avenue, all through Ghent. Amazing. But then some picturesque places, even near West Freemason, old, this historic parts of Norfolk. But then Chesapeake has alternate examples of what you might find in Virginia Beach. You can find different types in Chesapeake. It's more of a suburban part of town, but you can find maybe for a little bit cheaper an area that might be a little bit further away, but it's a different vibe in Chesapeake. You'll find that it's suburban like Virginia Beach, but it has more of a rustic kind of a country feel to it as opposed to Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach is more like a city suburban. Chesapeake is more of a rural suburban, coming out from two different directions. Greenbrier is great, but different vibe than the rest of Chesapeake, So there are different parts of town have different vibes. And so I would not just look at what's in Virginia Beach and get the information that you might get tips about the Virginia Beach area itself, but it definitely does not tell the entire story of the rest of the area. Even then, Suffolk, I think it is the biggest land size city in Virginia, the state of Virginia. Massive. It's rural. But it also has some suburbs, especially in the northeastern part of Suffolk. So that Suffolk has, again, a mixture, I'd say, of Greenbrier, Chesapeake, kind of like suburban, newish, or old Chesapeake, downtown Suffolk it's old, 20s, 30s, 40s, kind of like what you might find in Norfolk, for example. And then going up, then you got places like Smithfield, more like straight country. But Carrollton, Newport News, and Hampton is more like, I'd say, like a Norfolk in some parts. But then there are parts that might feel like Chesapeake. Then if you go further north from there, Yorktown, York County, James City County, Williamsburg. I love Williamsburg. And people, if you want a kind of a vibe that's maybe like a suburban part of town, but maybe newer houses, check out Williamsburg. Great schools around the Williamsburg area. York County, underrated because people forget how highly desirable the York County schools are. Tabb, Grafton, York. They are up there even in state rank. So there are a lot of different parts of town here that can give you different vibes, different access to different things. If you want to be across on one side of the tunnel or the other, you're not going to be, totally devoid of options if you're on one side or the other. So don't just focus on Virginia Beach, which then leads me to the last thing, which I think is a big culmination of all the other things that I would suggest as a local based on what I know, which is, please, if you can, come here for at least 3 to 4 days. And if you're trying to really get a whole assessment of the entire Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area, try and stay for a week if you can. If you know somebody, just try and find a way, because this area does not look like it's very big on the map. It is massive and can get very confusing very fast. It changes in an instant in different parts of town. It can be very easy to forget and things run together. So I would focus on individual cities or parts of cities in each day that you're here, if possible. And so what I do, I help people relocate to this area, Virginia Beach through Williamsburg. So if you do come here, what I do is I would give you a specific plan and method to go through the area that, from my experience and from feedback that people have told me, kind of helps to break the area up so it doesn't feel like a big jumbled mess. And I found that, again, it takes a certain amount of days based on how much of the area you want to cover for the areas that you want to focus on. So definitely plan to come here if possible for a reconnaissance trip, because the things you see in video, the things you see in research online do not tell the whole story. I try my best in all of my videos to give as clear and accurate depiction of the pros and the cons of living here. But even in video, it's just you looking at a screen. It can really help to add some extra layers of understanding to be here in person and just get a taste of it. What does it look like? What does it feel like in different parts of Virginia Beach or Norfolk, Chesapeake, through Hampton Roads? Check it out. And then by the time you're done, number one is you'll find areas that you like. But the biggest, most important thing that I find when I help people when they're trying to move here and make decisions is you can cross out the areas you don't like, the areas you don't want, because there are so many areas here, so many parts of Virginia Beach and the whole region of Hampton Roads, that crossing those areas out can help you just stay focused on the places that matter the most. Definitely come here for a trip. I can help you make the right plan for your reconnaissance trip before you get here. So by the time you get here, you can hit the ground running and really kind of narrow down the places that you want to focus on the most to live. So if you have any more questions about relocating to the Virginia Beach area, through Virginia Beach to Williamsburg, Norfolk, Chesapeake, through Newport News, let me know. It's what I do. I love helping people relocate to the area. So if you have any questions, I have my contact information in the description. You can call me, you can email me, you can text me, and I will do whatever I can to help you relocate to the area. And I will see you on the next video.